when the fight first was made, I was skeptical about whether it was a legitimate fight or not because of the difference in weight classes naturally. Um, and then as the fight group got closer, and I looked more into it, I realized that Crawford. I reported earlier this week. I said that Crawford had a 3.5 inch reach. It's actually 4.5 inches. So and they're basically the same height. Crawford is half an inch taller. So basically, 2'5'7", 5'8" guys. One of them has a significantly, somewhat significantly longer reach, and we saw what happened. I picked Canelo to win by just about around the similar scores than what was official and how I had it, but it went the opposite direction. Crawford won it. Um, Canelo, he looks slightly heavier, like thicker. Like I said, he's not really the bigger man. I'm sure he was actually stronger, but with Bud's reach, Canelo really couldn't. Bud's reach and Bud's boxing ability, Canelo couldn't really get close enough consistently to land anything, really hard. Um, I think once again it showed when you start talking about this happened with Pacquiao, right? Pacquiao was at 130, then he fought the one fight at 135 against Diaz, uh, and then he fought, then he jumped up 147 against Oscar. And of course, when that fight was first made, everybody thought, well, this is ridiculous. How can Oscar De La Hoya, at his size, fight Manny Pacquiao at his size? And then as it got closer and closer to the fight, more of the boxing aficionados, they started to kind of change their tune. And I think what Pacquiao's run showed up at those larger weight classes, and much was discussed about this at the time, was when you see to make weight in boxing, normally, you have to shed weight, and that takes a lot out of you to do that. So in the case of someone like Pacquiao, at 130 pounds, I think his last fight at 130 was against Marquez, their second fight. I think Pacquiao weighed like 145 pounds in the ring, right? Something like that. And then against Diaz at lightweight, his one fight at lightweight, he weighed 100 and I think it was 147 in the ring, right? And so when Pacquiao moved up to welterweight, basically he was just fighting at his natural walking around weight without having to kill himself to make weight. So when he gets in the ring, he's fresh, you know. And I think the same thing happened with Crawford fighting at 168 against Spence in his last fight at welterweight. I was two fights before this one. He weighed 165 pounds in the ring, so rehydrated up to 165. And then against Madrimov in his one fight at 154, in his last fight, he rehydrated up to 170. So um, once again, you have a situation where maybe they're facing someone who weighs more in the ring than them on that night and has been at that weight class longer. But that person probably had to tax themselves to shed weight to make that weight. And, Bud Crawford didn't have to do that. So he's just out there he's out there fresh. He feels good. He didn't have to kill himself to make the weight. He just basically just all he had to do was just train. He didn't have to lose weight to make weight more than likely. So, um, I think that plays a big factor when this type of stuff happens, and people don't consider that enough. That it's actually it's something of an advantage for the so-called smaller fighter when that they don't have to shed weight. They don't have to take that extra bit of effort that it takes, which takes a lot, to shed weight. You can just basically like I said, just train for the fight, and make sure their conditioning is right, make sure their body is right, but they don't have to drain themselves to make weight. Um, I would say that Bud Crawford now, and I said in my fight preview that if he wins, you have to put him up there, uh, with at least a Floyd Mayweather. You know, maybe doesn't have the resume of Mayweather as far as all the guys, the Hall of Famers and stuff that Mayweather beat. But as far as quality of fighter, I would say that anybody um, under 5'10", whoever fought between 100 and, and these, that the 140 through, you know, 160, like, Crawford's not really a 168 pounder. He moved up in weight to get this bag and make history. But I'm talking about of course, there's Ray Robinson. I don't even include him in it because he's just completely in a different tier. And then, there's Ray Leonard, there's Mayweather, there's, you know, Pacquiao. Pacquiao was really, Pacquiao was like, he was, he became a star at featherweight, right? But really, Pacquiao's smaller than those guys, but, yeah, if you think of just like Ray Leonard, Floyd Mayweather, I put Leonard on a slightly higher tier than Floyd. And Leonard was 5'10". So I think any welterweight or anybody ever fought at 140, 147, 154, and they were, under 5'10", Terence Crawford is giving them problems, and that includes Floyd. He's that good. And the thing about Crawford is that what I was basically alluding to in my fight preview is that you have to be in order to do something like, what Crawford did uh, last night, you basically have to have like a superpower. Like you have to have, you have to be a supernatural athlete, like a Pacquiao or a Mayweather or a Leonard, or you have to have, tremendous punching power or something like that. And Bud doesn't have that. He's a superhero without superpowers. And when I was younger, and I was writing about boxing for this fight blog called The Rumble, and Bill Simmons he had written something about Jason Kidd. He was saying, like, do you know how good Jason Kidd has to be to have the impact that he has without being able to shoot? Jason Kidd's someone who he ended up becoming, like, I think when he retired, he was like top 10 all time in threes. But really, Jason Kidd, he improved in that regard, but really, Jason Kidd, someone was natural. He couldn't shoot. He didn't have a good looking jumper. He ended up being a decent 3-point shooter and played long enough to, compile enough, a bunch of threes. But he wasn't a natural shooter by any means. But he still had an incredible impact. And Bill Simmons was saying, do you know how good you have to be at everything else to make up for the fact that that you can't really do the most basic thing that you can do in basketball, which is shoot the ball. And so I wrote a piece for the Rumble where I basically piggybacked off of that, and I talked about Juan Manuel Marquez. Manuel Marquez was like that, where he wasn't an exceptional athlete, he wasn't a big puncher. Uh, there was nothing physically about him that stood out, but he was just a brilliant tactician, a brilliant counterpuncher, incredible heart, incredible bravery, and that's what made him. That's what made him great. And I think at the time, the person who hired me, Dave Larzalera, we called him Large. That's what he went by, Large. Um, he liked the idea, and he brought up. I think it was him who brought up Greg Maddox. It might have been me. One of us though. We brought up Greg Maddox and how Maddox was like that. But Maddox, and I would compare Crawford more to make this cross-sport analogy. I compare him more to Maddox um, than Kidd, because Kidd not being able to shoot was like a glaring weakness. Maddox didn't have any glaring weaknesses, but he also didn't have overpowering stuff. He was just a great His command and his control was just so good. And that's more like who Bud Crawford is like. He doesn't have a he's not he's a good athlete, but not a great athlete. He's been a good puncher, not a great puncher. He has good hand speed, but not exceptional hand speed. But he's just such a well-rounded, complete fighter. You know, I mean, it's like Mayweather is actually more like a Jason Kidd because Floyd's hands. Now Floyd was a puncher. Don't get me wrong. 30 and 35, but by the time he got to 40 and 47 and 54, you don't really have to worry about him hurting you so much most of the time. So that was kind of like he was kind of like a Jason Kidd in that sense, especially with him having those brittle hands that he had. And so, um, yeah, I think that I think Crawford he has no holes in his game. He's just a completely balanced and well-rounded fighter, uh, good at everything, even if he's not great at any single thing. And like I said, good athlete. And his ring IQ, that would probably be if he had a superpower, that's what it would be. He's just so intelligent, such a tactician. Uh, as for Canelo, man, what can I say? He's still rich. He's still a Hall of Famer. But he's now 0-2 against the two best guys he ever fought, Mayweather and Crawford. He wasn't the favorite against Mayweather, but he was the favorite against Crawford. And he basically just got completely, outboxed. Um, you know, like I said, the size difference was overstated. It wasn't much of a size difference. But Canelo, he hadn't fought at 154. I don't know, Canelo's not really, like, at 168 pounds, if you're 5'8", that's not real. That's not a real. Canelo's really like a middleweight fighting at 168, right? Um, but he hasn't fought at 154 pounds in almost 9 years exactly. September 17th, 2016 was the last time he fought at 154. That was against Liam Smith. Yet he lost to someone last night who only fought at 154 once, and that was in his last fight. So, now also, I have to say, and I guess I won't fall for this trick again. The only time a Latin fighter ever beat a slick black African American fighter in a big fight was when Duran beat Leonard. I can't think of another time when it happened in a big fight. Whitaker, we all know that was the greatest. They call it a draw. Whitaker probably won 9 rounds, if not more, and they called it a draw. That was absurd. Floyd beat Oscar. Hell, Oscar even lost to Shane Mosley twice. I don't know if you. I don't know. I guess you could call it Shane. Shane liked to mix it up, but he had such good, tremendous hand speed. I guess you could call him slick. But you could hit Shane easily though. Even though most people think Oscar won that second fight. Yeah, but it pretty much doesn't happen. The Latin fighter never beats the slick African American fighter unless you're Duran, and that's what makes Duran the greatest living fighter. That he was able to beat Ray Leonard. And then something funny happened. So, the fight was live on Netflix, and so I don't know. Somehow, my feed got like 20 minutes behind because I was scoring the fight, and it was the 7th round, and I'm sitting there. I'm sitting there, watching. I'm scoring, and I get a notification on my phone that says, I pick up my phone. I look. It says Terence Crawford's from ESPN. Notification from ESPN. It says Terence Crawford stuns uh, Canelo Alvarez. Like a what? And I'm thinking, okay, maybe my feed is a little bit behind. Is there about to be a knockout that happens? And then I got a notification of a tweet from Lake Show Yo, and it said that you know Bud rocked Canelo, and I'm thinking to myself, is there a knockout that's supposed to happen? That's about to happen like any second here? And it turned out I guess my feed was like 20 minutes. I don't know how I got like 20 minutes behind, but the fight was over and I was still watching the seventh round, thinking it was live. And so I fast forwarded to the end and saw the noise going to the scorecards, and Crawford had won. And then I just fast forwarded back to where I was and finished scoring it. You know, um, so but that was kind of funny. And actually, I like knowing what happens. It's like it relaxes me. Um, but yeah, man, shout out to Crawford. Uh, Made the most money he's ever made in his life. He should never go broke after the money that he made tonight. And for Canelo, or last night, and for Canelo, he just adds to his fortune. You know, so um, congrats to both of those men, but especially Crawford because he made history and he's firmly entrenched in the all-time great category.